Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with the screenwriter's take on The Legend of Vox Machina. Yes, I watched the first episode and I'm going to review it now. We're going to talk about the trailer, some of my predictions, what I said in the trailer review, and we're going to talk about the pilot itself. I'm going to give you a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler review where we're going to analyze it. So smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books. Links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 7. You can get them at Amazon.com, and Kindle Unlimited is free. Now, if you don't know the story of why I am reviewing this, let me wind you up a little bit. I was asked by a fan of the show, probably a fan of Critical Role. Critical Role is a YouTube show where they play the voice actors, a group of voice actors play Dungeons and Dragons with these characters. And now they're doing a cartoon based on the characters since the YouTube show is so popular, apparently. They raised money on a Kickstarter. And so one of the fans, asked me, will you look at the trailer? And he sent me a link, and it was a link to this Red Band trailer. And the idea behind the show, it's supposed to be like kind of fantasy for adults. But I think, number one, to give you a non-spoiler review, I'm going to do that first. The non-spoiler review of this. I think the adult stuff in this show doesn't help it. Doesn't help it at all. That being said, the show's good. It's a straight-up fantasy show. It didn't get too inside baseball with most of the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but did for some of it. It didn't do gaming stuff per se. It just threw in powers and spells and didn't bother to explain how any of these characters could use them or do them or whatever. They just can do stuff, and good luck figuring out how they can do it. So I on that score, I think it exceeded my expectations. I thought it would be too inside baseball. It wasn't that inside baseball. The second thing was the trailer sort of billed itself as a comedy fantasy. It's not comedy. It's more of a straight up fantasy with some amusing moments. And I'm sure for the fans of Critical Role, it's much funnier to you because you know the characters, the voice actors, and all the backstory. But it wasn't that funny. It just wasn't. The jokes weren't landing. They weren't awful. Most of them weren't cringeworthy, although one was. They just were like unnecessary. So I think the adult portion and the jokes really didn't help them. They didn't need them. I think they've got the elements of a good straight up fantasy, and they should focus on that. That all being said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first episode. I may watch another one or two to see if they kill that monster, which I won't say yet because I'm trying not to spoil it for the rest of you. Now, spoilers review ahead. So now I'm opening up the can of spoilers. You've been warned. If you're going to see the show first. It's worth seeing if you're into Dungeons and Dragons. Certainly if you're into Critical Role, it's a must. I think fantasy fans who play Dungeons and Dragons will get most of it. If you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, I think you could enjoy it. You might have a few questions, but overall, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I would give it a 7 out of 10, I think. 7 out of 10 would be my rating. Now, here, spoiler review, and we got to talk about the trailer. The trailer is bad. The trailer gave me totally the wrong impression of the show because it tries to be funny and shows the other D&D party get killed. That should not have been in the trailer at all. That should not have been in the trailer. That was the one hardcore Dungeons and Dragons bit in the show, and the rest of them really weren't, game based. It didn't need to be in there. It gives you the wrong impression. It gave me the wrong impression. I'll say that. But if they had kept that out, what they needed in this trailer was, in the first episode, Scanlan, the little guy, the bard, all the way on the left there in the hat, he sings a song introducing all the characters. They needed to play that entire song in the trailer. Whether or not they showed him singing or not didn't matter. They should have started him singing the song, showed a little bit of it, and then cut to all the characters as he was singing, which is what they do in the show. It introduces all the characters. There's 7 characters. That's a lot of characters in a show, by the way. Ideally, what I would have done is I probably would have dropped a couple of the characters, at least for the first episode, concentrated on a smaller group of them, introduce them, and then they have to recruit 2 or 3 more guys in order to go after the dragon at the end. Because ultimately you would have had the same thing. You have too many characters in the show right now. For a half-hour show, that's a lot of characters. I get it. They're all the players, and they're players, and you can't get rid of them. I get that, but Percival to me is the biggest problem because he has guns. They look to be machine-tooled, so his technology looks to be far advanced of any of the other characters in the show, and that includes the NPCs. And the big question for normies, not normies, but, well, if a normie watched the show or just even a fan of Lord of the Rings, first of all, their first question would be, where did he get guns? Do they have guns in this world? And then their second question might be, why doesn't the king's guards have guns? Why doesn't the king have guns? Why don't all his men have guns? If guns are the best weapon. And if the guns aren't the best weapon, then that's another question. So throwing the guns in opens up a lot of questions, unless you play Dungeons and Dragons, which I do. Been playing D&D since the late 70s. I know that 3rd edition introduced the blunderbuss, where you could actually buy a gun. There's a primitive gun, but Percy's gun is not his 2 guns are not a blunderbuss. Those are not blunderbusses. Those are machine-tooled, they're almost revolvers, I think. And he fired off a few rounds. So, yeah, he probably needs his own episode as an introduction. And you could have done that in episode 2. He could have been, even if you just started with the 6 characters and not Percival, they could go find him and then introduce him and have a whole episode, half an episode where they explain who he is and then why he has guns, and then go fight the dragon or whatever happens in the 2nd episode. I haven't seen it yet. The other characters don't need much introduction because they are characters you know in fantasy settings. The elves definitely don't need introductions. The twins, one's got a bow, the other's a thief. We all get that. The druid, you could probably get away with. Even the normies would know what a druid is. Certainly the barbarian, although he's got blue skin and he's giant kin or whatever the hell 5th edition allows you to play now. The bard, also, you don't have to explain him, although his weird giant purple hand thing, I assume that's a power he has, a spell he has in the game. And even the cleric, you really don't have to explain. People can kind of get all those. Percival requires another hurdle, especially in the fantasy world. Because when you say fantasy, you mean sword and sorcery. The other problem, I think the adult stuff doesn't help this show. Doesn't help it. I'm not getting anything extra by seeing boobies, balls, and blood in this drama. None of that made this all that different. You could have done the scenes with Scanlan, not shown anything, or, censored them. You could have cut back on the blood enough. Like in that first scene where the other mercenary groups gets killed, which again was the only joke that was like mostly a Dungeons and Dragons joke, because we all play Dungeons and Dragons, we all get killed, and we make another party, and they just keep getting killed. So I assume the names of the other parties who have died were like names of previous characters of these guys, maybe, if they've been playing long enough. But, you could have made it just as dramatic, if not more dramatic, by showing the characters and then cutting away and then hearing them screaming and not seeing them. You don't have to show everything to make a dramatic, comment on things. because the biggest dramatic moment of the episode is when the characters go back to the village and find everybody dead. That's a big moment. And that really worked. That was the best moment of the whole show. When they go back and find everybody dead, it's like, whoa, they messed up. And now they have motivation to go kill the dragon. That was all great. That was the best part of the show. Hands down. The stuff in the bar, first off, the bar got too bloody. The bar was the weakest scene, in my view. The bar got too bloody. He cut off a dude's hand. That's too much. I get it. He's not human, and he survives. Maybe he grows back his hand. I don't know what race he is. You can play any race you want in 5th edition, apparently. But that was too much for a bar brawl. There are certain rules. The rules are really, you don't go that far in a bar brawl. Like if you had broken his hand or broken his arm, like, yeah, okay. But then he pulled out an axe and chopped off his hand. Like, that means pull out your weapons and kill people. So, you're not going to kill off the main characters in the first episode. And you were killing guys. That's too much. From a dramatic standpoint, it's too much. If you were going to watch a live action show, if you're watching Lord of the Rings, and the hobbits get into a fight in the first bar they go to, and they had to kill 5 guys to get out, you'd be like, oh, those guys are like murderous little psychopaths. Jesus. Don't mess with them. They killed 5 people getting out of that bar. Like, it's too much. From a dramatic standpoint. Like, I get it. In Dungeons & Dragons, it doesn't matter. These people are NPCs. Who cares? But in a fantasy show, if life is cheap, these guys should be... One of them, you should have thrown in another character to die. That would have been good. Then it would have sort of even things out a bit. But you're not going to kill off any of the main characters, so it's unnecessary. From a dramatic standpoint, the bar brawl was a little too bloody, unnecessarily so. You didn't gain anything with that bar brawl. It wasn't fun when they killed a guy and cut off another guy's hand. It made it too serious. And the dumbest moment was they cut to the bartender who has a pink hair and that weird haircut that they put for every social justice warrior is in a cartoon. I mean, it was the same haircut for Tila in the new He-Man cartoon, the same haircut for some other character that they turned into, I don't know, a social justice warrior. So she's got a bright pink hair and then turns into a minotaur and throws everybody out. Okay, I get it. That's the stupid new 5th edition rules where I guess you could be a minotaur and transform into an animal whenever you want, but it's stupid. That's dumb. And it didn't make any sense for even the normie fantasy type people. Like, oh, she's a minotaur? Oh, and she could turn into a human? That's not what minotaurs do. Minotaurs are minotaurs. They live in mazes. And they usually don't run bars. And they don't transform. So, I didn't really get that. It seemed like a pointless distraction. Could have been a human. Could have been a dwarf. Could have been another guy like your barbarian there, Grog. Why not another guy like him? Why not establish the races a little bit instead of just like, I guess you're doing the Star Wars cantina thing with so many aliens you can't keep track of them all. But see, those aliens are different. You can make up stuff about the aliens all day long. They're all different. A minotaur is a specific thing. Okay? A minotaur is a particular monster with a particular backstory that you either are using or you're just saying, well, we're throwing the rules out. In which case, you don't know where you are. Am I in a... Okay, so everybody can transform into a monster. Okay. So, who's human, who's not? How do I tell that? Where are the humans? Do the humans run things? Do the animals run things? Do the human-animal hybrids run things? It just makes it more difficult to understand the world. It doesn't make it impossible. I mean, if you keep slogging through the episodes, eventually you'll get it, but why put up that barrier? Why not make it simple? Why not just say not having a bartender like that? I get it. Maybe that was part of the show. Maybe that character is a long running character. She's always there. They always go back to that bar. She always throws them out. I don't know. I only saw one episode, but seems to me that they wouldn't have hot pink hair dye in the Middle Ages. But then again, they shouldn't have guns either, so the technology is kind of all over the place in that area. But other than that, once they got on the actual mission, I actually enjoyed it because it was about the characters. The cleric who wants to do good, the druid who's unsure of herself, the twins who are just out for themselves, which for some reason got repeated after the bar fight. For some reason, I'm not sure why. You didn't need to repeat that because I already knew that from the way they acted. But I guess that was fine, So overall, I would give it like a 7 out of 10 if I had to give you a 1 to 10 rating. I think, pretty much like I said in my evaluation, Dungeons and Dragons fans, yeah, they'll watch it. They'll like it. They'll get most of it too. They'll get what a druid is and what she can do and some of the other powers. Even if they don't play 5th edition like me, they'll kind of like, oh, okay, that must be their new power or whatever. Like the barbarian shouts or something and the shout does something. I think they had that in 4th edition. They certainly understand what a bard does, what a cleric does, what the thieves do. The gun-toting guy, they kind of understand that. They'll get it. Now, people at the level of a fantasy, but they really only know like Lord of the Rings, they don't play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if maybe catch like 25-50% of them, maybe, because they like elves. But I think a lot of them, it could go either way. It could rub them the wrong way because there's so many elements here. And it's almost too much. It's not classic. So I think you'll pick up some of them. I don't think the Red Band trailer did it any favors. I think if anything, the Red Band trailer, nah. That trailer, not a good trailer. And the normies, they're going to be totally lost. Look, I know you think the normies, they'll get it. You play Dungeons and Dragons. You watch Critical Role. You already get it. You already get it before you see one frame of this. They don't get it, okay? They're going to struggle with it. And people don't like to struggle with their entertainment. They just like escapism. Now, maybe they'll hang in long enough to see the dragon and then they won't care. Because the dragon is badass. The dragon is badass. Mostly because he just, wrecks the place. And that's the way dragons should be. But, and if it's going to be comedy, then these guys, I don't really see it as a comedy. Sorry. I mean, I think it was better fantasy than it was comedy. I think they should mostly abandon the comedy. You can have amusing moments, sure. You don't want to keep it totally dark, but the fantasy was the best part. By far. By far, the fantasy was better. The dragon was good. The motivation after the village was good. It was they lingered a bit long on the village. I didn't really like that. They didn't really meet everybody, but they met enough people that there was a reason that they went back. They had a moment there with the thief giving the kid a silver coin, although they were broke. It seemed out of character for a thief to do that, but okay, I could see it. He's got a heart of gold, or a kid reminds him of himself. And, they had a big scene with the kid dying. So that was all good motivation. I would say the first act, probably the weakest act. Then the second act introduces the characters, and I'm mostly on board. And then the third act, that was good. That was the best. And that would be the way to rate it. That would be the way to structure it. You want all the best stuff last. I think in terms of the Red Band trailer, though, they needed to show dragon. Number one, they needed to show that dragon because the dragon was cool. They needed to have, sure, you could have a couple of funny lines. Too much of the humor relies on them saying the F word. is what it comes down to. And it's not that funny. That's a weak choice. It's a weak choice in comedy to just throw F-bombs out. The weakest thing comedians do is when they start cursing on stage. When they start cursing a blue streak, they're usually in a panic, trying to get their squeeze a few laughs out, just to get enough confidence to get out some more jokes. And yeah, the F-bombs don't help. The nudity didn't help, and the blood didn't help. So why have it? The fantasy was better than all that. It's not going to attract like Game of Thrones type people. They're not going to come for that. They would want something a little more. You'd have to go, way more nudity and way more graphic. And I don't think you want that in this show if it's going to stay light. If you got some, if you claim to have a comedy show, or at least partial comedy show, you need lighter moments. I like that the characters aren't too dark like Game of Thrones. I like the characters in general. There was a little too much exposition in the show, but there's so many characters you had to have it all. Except for Grog, right? You don't need exposition in a guy like Grog. And a lot of you said, oh, you want Lord of the Rings, you want the same characters. It's because you don't have to give too much exposition. Like, I didn't need a lot of exposition on Grog because he's a fighter. He's a barbarian. No further explanation needed. Right? I don't need explanation on him. I needed a tiny bit, maybe a tiny bit for the thieves, the twins. I didn't need much on the druid, but I think the normies would. The gnome and I guess another gnome, the cleric, the bard and the cleric, they're more obscure. And Percival's like way out on the end of the bell curve, needs explanation. So if I had to evaluate it, I would have said it would have been better off cutting Percival for this episode and then recruiting him in the second episode. And then giving his backstory, explaining why he has all these guns and, why he's so deadly with them, although he wasn't deadly in the show. See, this is the problem with having too many characters. And there are too many characters in a show for a half-hour show. But, again, I get why they're in there. They don't get to do everything. Percival didn't really get to do anything. Not in the way, the gun guy should. The gun guy should blow somebody's head off and it should be awesome. The thieves got to do stuff. The druid certainly got to do stuff. Scanlan, Grog, and the cleric. But Percival, he really didn't do much. So I would have kept him out of it. It would have helped introduce the other characters. But I get why he's in there. I get it. I mean, he's in a party, and that's, has to happen that way. So overall, again, I would give it a 7 out of 10. I will probably watch at least another 1 or 2 episodes to see if they kill the dragon. I want to see the dragon again. The dragon was cool. I'm telling you, put the dragon in the Red Band trailer next time. Here's the Red Band trailer I want to see. You started off with an intro, basic intro. Here's a bunch of heroes that you've never seen before in the kingdom of whatever the kingdom's name was, I forget. There's Scanlan, and then show Scanlan and boobies because it's a Red Band trailer. You can show that. Scanlan's messing around with that girl, and he's like, "Ha! I will sing a song about the Vox Machina," and then cut to the song, cut to various characters doing their thing as Scanlan sings. Cut out that last cringe bit where he sings about himself, but we already know about Scanlan. That was the one joke I hated. Him doing a rap at the end or whatever the hell he was doing was stupid. He sings the song. He introduces all the characters. We know who all the characters are. And then show us a lineup of all the monsters they're going to fight. Show us a couple of swings in the bar brawl. Show us the dragon, at the end. The Legend of Vox Machina, although I would change the name. Boom. And you got yourself a trailer. Now you got yourself a trailer. Now I know what the trailer's about. Yeah, is it going to be funny? Yeah, it's not a comedy show, though. It's going to be amusing, but it's not a comedy show. And you're not trying to sell it as a comedy show. You're trying to sell it as, here's a bunch of guys who are going to kick A and take names. Because they do. They fight. The action was good. The animation's solid. Animation's solid. The voiceover's solid. The fantasy needs a little work. The comedy, I could do without. The adult stuff, again, doesn't really add to it. But overall, 7 out of 10. And that's my evaluation. So I recommend it. I recommend it. See it. It's on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free. So go check it out. It's called The Legend of Vox Machina. And I told you I would like it. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Check me out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our other 2 videos. We have a news blast and a Hollywoke hot take today, a massive one. Don't miss it. And we'll see you